Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the last Nerds and Night of the year. Sorry for the delay. As we warned you guys a couple months back, this is our busy time of year, both for the retail side and for just family in general. So I am Kid Thunder DJ, joined by the baby legs to my regular legs.
Fire 47.
Thank you. Anyway, so again, it's the end of the year. We're going to keep it light. We have some topics we're going to talk about, some news, but obviously some of this news is a couple of days old, so some of it's going to be a little bit, dated, but just go along with it. It's the last show of the year. We wanted to give you something before we're out. So without further ado, we'll jump into the show proper. First, I want to say you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Nerds at Night, N-I-T-E, Twitter at Nerds at Night, N-I-T-E, YouTube at Nerds at Night, N-I-T-E, which is good because if you want to go back and listen to an old show, I think all but the first show is there, because with our deal with Spreaker, we only can host so many hours at a time, so old shows roll off once we hit that gap. So that is what it is. So if you want to listen to the old shows, go to YouTube. They're there.
Yep.
I wanted to get started also by saying, don't forget to check out some of our friends, the guys over at Real Spoilers. I know they're getting ready to do their big episode for Star Wars Rogue One. I read the plot synopsis on it. It looks really good. It definitely is a great sort of way to tie in the prequels to the first set of movies, and the way they did some of the digital effects to have some of the characters back looks really good. Definitely worth checking out. I don't want to spoil it. That's their job. But if you're leery about it, or if you want to see if they thought the same thing you thought about it, seeing as how it's made all the money this weekend, listen to the Real Spoilers podcast coming up this week.
I was going to say, I haven't looked too much into that, but didn't that get some sort of SJW backlash or something? Or
who knows? SJW backlash happens to everything. And here's...
Yeah, that happens. That's definitely true, but it's I think that one got some targeting, because I can't remember if it was something good or bad, but I think the casting...
Oh, it's never good. It's never good when the social justice warriors run their mouth. Right. And if you think you're a social justice warrior, A, why are you listening to this thing? And B, I want you to do me a favor.
Oh, God.
No. This will help you. This is logic. This will help you. If you're a social justice warrior who's just one of those types that has to look for that gotcha moment in everything, I want you to do me a favor. Go to Netflix. And I'm sure you've got Netflix. I mean, you may be leeching off your neighbor's Wi-Fi, but I'm sure you got Netflix. I want you to look up Patton Oswalt talking for clapping. Because he does this great bit about language and why you people really need to stop caring about what people say. Because he's right. Evil people learn all the terminology really quick so they can smuggle evil ideas in. Whereas most people who don't care and are probably your ally, yeah, they may use words you don't like. I used to say, if two queers want to get married, you know what? That's still a good thought. You may not like the fact I said queers, but you know what? I'm still saying they should get married.
Right.
But, and you see, that used to be okay with people, and the example he cites is RuPaul getting in trouble for saying tranny. RuPaul. One of the, people who laid down on the barbed wire of hatred and backlash of society against them is now being ran over by the people enjoying the social liberty of it and getting yelled at for it. So it's just listen to the whole bit, because I'm not doing it justice at all on purpose, so that you can still be surprised and to it. But it's definitely a good way to look at social justice warriors in this country that, as of today, has officially, there is no more out, has officially elected Donald Trump.
Right.
By the way, if you're a Trump supporter somehow managing to listen to this podcast, I'm not going to call you names. I'm not. And I'm not going to insult you. All I'm going to say is look really hard in the community you're around, because you've hurt someone you care about. And you probably did it. Statistics show you probably did it out of some kind of racial or social driving factor that you probably don't even realize is hurting someone in your life. That's big point one. And point number two, if you're also in the demographic statistic, the older white Southern American, I really hope you're not on Social Security, because he's declared war on that already. So, if you're living on SSI, or if you're living on your Social Security or Medicaid, and that's all your income right now, good luck, because you literally just voted it away. That's not a joke. That's not funny. Haha. There's, 5 minutes on reputable news sites, not haha.imright.com. But, if you don't trust American news, the best source for news to get it a little more drilled down and fair and balanced, go to the BBC. Shockingly enough, go to Al Jazeera. Go to a foreign news source that covers American news, because they have no horse in this race. And see all the stuff you voted for. And I know we're not a political show, and I'm trying not to be political, but...
I was about to say, there's our political segment.
It's the last show of the year, and we're going to be gone for a couple weeks, so the people who get butthurt over this have a couple weeks to get over it. And I am actually thinking of looking at what I can do second podcast-wise to just sort of be me and the mic to rant about all this based on his...
issues.
Right. Well, just based on who he's assigned to the cabinet. He made, a dozen or so picks for his cabinet. One was kind of okay.
Yeah.
Bush didn't have that bad of a record. Anyway, we really will go on a tear if I don't stop.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
Also as a little test to see if he listens, I'm going to give a shout out to my buddy Dre. He's taking the steps he needs to get himself healthy right now, and trying to give him all the support I can, because it's been a rough go for him. So
nice.
Keep up the good work, Dre.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get into the show proper. After all of our shout outs in that long ass intro segment.
Right.
So Watch Dogs had come out along with the final push Christmas games.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 15, Watch Dogs, a couple others. Last Guardian, which I almost bought. I almost bought Last Guardian, and I love the visual style of the Eco and the, what is it?
Shadow of the Colossus.
Shadow of the Colossus, and I love the concept of some of them. I can't do those kind of long, drawn-out, puzzly action games. They get annoying.
Yeah. And I've seen like a little bit of gameplay that a lot of the AI for this one can be pretty shitty. For
people who for people who should have mastered this a long time ago and pretty much did, it was, from my understanding, very disappointing as how sort of dumb the AI was. But I don't want to get off on a tear on it because we didn't pick it up. But I do want to say it is out. I have been getting really into Watch Dogs 2.
Yeah, that's been the one you've been focusing on.
Right, and you focused on Final Fantasy 15, and we'll get to that, because that's, as much, that is the bigger release.
Yeah.
So I'll let you talk about that at length here in a minute. But I just want to run down, real quick, the pros and cons. It's a Ubisoft game, so much like the predecessor, much like just about every game they make, open world, good maps. We'll get into more detail about that in a minute, but about what I feel about the maps. But, you played one, you played them all in terms of what the sort of general idea is. So the story is you're this hacker kid, you join DedSec, standard fare of we're going to take down the people behind CTOS, and we're going to stop them from all the evil things they're using this system for. And I've played just long enough to realize who the actual face of the bad guy is going to be. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But here are the pros. First of all, the characters are having fun. And that's what was missing from the last game. Think about it. You're running around a city, able to hack ostensibly anything, even though it's not, but you're able to really mess with people's days. Yeah. And the main guy in the first game, Adrian, was just so emo.
Yeah.
And my God, I gotta stop these people.
He was a Batman knockoff with a terrible backstory.
It was
no driving force.
Yeah, it was a bad backstory. It didn't make sense. He sounded like, a mix between Batfleck and, Liam Neeson from Taken.
I was about to say Batman and Rorschach.
Right. It just didn't... The one thing that would have made that game better is if it would have had the sense of joy in what they're doing that the people in this game do. They're all goofy and having fun with it. It's bright colored in their little hideouts. It's more of that you got in the later part of the first game when you actually started working with the hacker group to achieve your goal. But
right, basically, it's pretty obvious they took a lot of consideration, and they basically took it the 180 degrees the other direction.
Right.
And this was something I kind of saw in one more. This reviewer was a little bit more sarcastic, and a lot of other stuff. It just kind of pokes fun at everything. Did they go too far the other direction in your mind?
No.
Do you think it was worth it?
I think I could see why you would think that, especially given the subject matter and everything. But to me, being a 90s kid, a late 80s, early 90s kid, This was a callback to the movie Hackers.
Right.
That's what this felt like to me. Bunch of kids going up against something that no matter how smart they are, they would have never had a chance at beating, using technology that doesn't really exist even for the time. That was all funny, haha, and you had everybody who was a personality without being a stereotype, because they're all under the stereotype of being nerds. And it fits. So to me, this was really kind of what I would have expected out of Hackers if they made Hackers the movie now. So that was a good pro. But some people want that seriousness, and I get that. So I'm gonna move on and talk about a couple other pros, and then I want to get to the cons, because there's a couple big cons I want people to be aware of. The puzzles for network hacking, this is a pro and a con, because I think some of them are clearly either meant for you to be working with someone, which not all of us like online, or are just a little ridiculous because some of them now have timing mechanics and everything. But for the ones that are below that line, it's a lot of fun to, hack into a box. You add the elements with the drone and the race car to help you get some of these things done. It is a really fun challenge to kind of keep things mixed up.
Yeah, and those can give you more points to leech off of to other electronics, right?
Sometimes you can use that to get into areas to find research points, which is how you level up. Sometimes it's just part of the game if you need to get into somewhere.
Right. I just mean they give you basically mobile hack points, like camera points.
Well, that's all over the place anyway. That's just been part of the game. Sorry if you guys hear any weird noises. I didn't have time to get a glass of water before we started, so I'm drinking out of a Coke bottle. Anyway, so I'm going to get into the cons, though. And this first one is a matter of opinion, but if you're talking about going the other direction in this one, I felt they went way more violent. It is just crazy that, you have this access to a 3D printer, which is how you buy in-game stuff. You can just start right out the bat with a sniper rifle and a high-end assault rifle, and there's no real penalty when you're in mission for killing people, which there really wasn't in the last game either. I'm not saying there is, or there was, but it just feels like it seems like they pushed stealth more in the last game.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't try to make it where there was upgrades you could do to your 3D printer, so then it could then handle making these more complex guns.
Right, they made it purely a money-based thing, and it was so easy, especially if you're in Club Ubisoft or whatever they call it. Which, by the way, I don't know how much longer that's going on, but if you download their version of Steam, you get 7 games free.
Uplay.
Yeah, Uplay. Check that out. Anyway, though, the point I was trying to make is it just seems like you're not really rewarded for sneaking around other than just not having to worry about more enemies coming at you. And they made a few challenges that would get you extra followers, which is your XP in this game, that was based around not setting off alarms. So sometimes it's fun to do stuff with the drone and with the race car to accomplish your goals. And there's a little bit of a hack for that. You can get an ability where you basically text a gang information on somebody in the area and tell them they're a traitor, and they'll show up, no questions asked, and just start shooting people. Because that makes sense.
Right. That sounds like fun.
It does. And that won't trigger a direct alarm for you. So, you can let them duke it out and sneak around. But again, that goes back to that more violent thing. It just doesn't seem like for a game about hacking and taking control of the environment, I would have liked to have seen more situations where you could take control of an environment, maybe use fire suppression systems or something like that to make people flee or to temporarily subdue them, get your objective and get out. And that ties into another point.
That'd be pretty cool.
This all takes place in San Francisco, okay?
Right.
San Francisco, pretty big area. They reuse locations for side quests so many times. It really sort of cuts the rug out of the San Francisco area. And I realize San Francisco's kind of over different little islands, especially in the game.
Now, how do you mean reuse? Are you talking internal?
I had 5 side quests take place at the same garage business.
I was going to say, are they going back to one area of it, or are they
No, it's
is there internals that just have the same map layout?
No, it's the same building, same literal building.
Okay.
And just enemy, do a new mission, enemies respawn, and you go. And it's not redoing the same mission over and over. Sometimes you're going in there to... that's the only thing that changes, is sometimes you're trying to get data off a computer. Sometimes you're trying to free a target who's being held prisoner. I mean, but it's still in the same building, and that to me really seemed like it just cut the map down so small. Which maybe that was their goal.
Definitely. Yeah, I could definitely see that, like limiting the size of everything.
Now there is the final con to me is the fact that the controls feel really clunky. Now I know some of that's the learning curve of getting used to how they've laid everything out, but it's just not easy. It's not intuitive. You wind up hitting accidental buttons all the time. The radial setup to pick what weapon and sub-weapon you're holding just seems, odd. I will say, though, one thing they definitely improved is car handling. Especially, and this is a shocker, usually in a game that's okay. Cars handle well, motorcycles don't. In this one, cars handle well, motorcycles handle better, especially if you're smart about speeds.
Nice.
You can get around so much faster and so much more efficiently on a bike in this game if you're careful.
And I was going to say, especially for a Ubisoft game.
Right. So that's the pros and cons for me, and what I liked and didn't like about my playtime so far, Watch Dogs 2. And I think I'm at about 10 hours of gameplay, so like I said, I'm just far enough into the story missions to know the face of the guy we're going to be going up against at the end of this, I'm sure. So, Brandon, you want to go ahead and jump in since you've been playing the ever-living hell out of Final Fantasy 15?
Yeah, I have. Let's see. I think my hour counter for it just passed 100.
Of course it did.
Well, part of it is just when it runs concurrent when I have it paused.
Mm-hmm.
At times when I might be busy.
Only part of it.
Only part of it. Only part of it. That might be an hour. That might be 1 hour.
Especially since you, when I'm not here, when I'm at my actual job, and you can stream to your notebook, you've basically got all the bandwidth you need to play the game relatively stable.
Yeah, but I honestly, it's not seriously. I haven't done that too much until like later in the afternoons.
Okay.
Usually in the mornings, I'm not doing that. Usually because I'm just too tired too and stuff. But yeah. Anyway, I've been playing through it. I've finished the main story. I think I finished every hunt now except for the big super boss Adamantoise thing, which was like a giant literal mountain turtle that wakes up and you have to fight it, and it takes like an hour or more to kill. And that right there kind of pulls me into one of the points I would probably make is as you get later into the game, a lot of the fights more or less just becomes like a war of attrition where you're going to sit there, do maybe at best 5% of damage, and they're going to just consistently knock your characters down into their low health state, and you're just going to throw an item and heal everyone back up and rinse and repeat. By the end of it, it does lose a lot of like strategy and
so it's
like it feels like you're not really able to like level to a point where you're not being stomped every fight.
So it sounds
and then
like
reviving yourself.
It sounds like they've got that
fake difficulty, maybe?
Yeah, not fake difficulty. They used to call adaptive leveling, where the enemies are always supposed to be close to your level, which is a fancy way of saying leveling up is really just for abilities.
Right.
Because we're going to make the enemies match you or match what their differential we feel should be no matter what, which is a
well, I mean, like
shitty tactic.
Enemies in different areas or older areas where you used to be, they don't level up with you. You can go back to like the starting area of like Hammerhead, the little starting garage, go fight some monsters out there, and they'll still be like level 10, and you can smash them in one hit. But when you're still fighting like the upgraded hunts that are like still on around your level and whatnot, it's kind of still the same area of like they're gonna destroy you, and if you don't have items, you're fucked. Or sorry, you're screwed.
Yeah, I understand. So,
but I mean, like besides that, what they have going for it is pretty good. I saw one review of it that was pretty well written that basically said like overall it's a solid experience and it's worth checking out, but no matter who you are as a Final Fantasy fan, something about it's probably going to irk you. And I think in my mind the thing that irks me for it is definitely the combat, and the best way I can describe it is when it works, it's a lot of fun and it does pretty well. When it doesn't work, it is goddamn infuriating.
That makes sense. And
like,
I could remember...
I think one of the biggest offenders of that is definitely flying enemies. Flying enemies are the freaking worst in this. I've shared gameplay clips of it. I'll probably post them up to the page.
Yeah, you got yourself a little Twitch channel. You decided to go in against Nerds at Night. You're competing against your own team.
I post links to it, so I mean,
what's your Twitch channel? Yeah, but
it's the same name as mine. So I mean, if you guys want to occasionally check me out, if I'm streaming something from PS4, Fire47, you can find me on there. I don't do it often, but
right,
like I did
until he starts getting his own sponsors, and he's like, I want equal billing on the podcast. I'm like, no, you're still a minion. Get out of here.
Right. I did a bit of like Dragon Quest when I had it, and then Final Fantasy when I was doing this parkour dungeon at the end of the game. That was a cool one. One of the things I'll give this game pretty good props to is the dungeons and like level designs for the dungeons are pretty good. There's this really cool dungeon midway through the game where like you enter this room that up in the ceiling basically looks like a layer of water. You think you're underwater for a minute, but you're not. And it just casts this really nice graphical effect on the entire area. And you're up in like the upper levels, and you end up working your way down to the bottom floor of it to fight the boss of that dungeon. And it's just a really cool area. And then the later one, you have this entire dungeon that you can find once you unlock the flying car.
Yeah. Or
the flying upgrade in the post-game. And it's over near the volcano. You can kind of see it when you're flying around. It's entirely parkour, where you are just... Yeah, you would think that. You just did. Like, most times when a game that isn't parkour-based tries to do a parkour or platforming section, it's terrible.
Right, because they don't put the effort into it.
Right, they don't have the controls meant to do it. This one actually works pretty well. A lot of the things that I do... It runs itself pretty well. It's a lot of confusing puzzles and just like layouts that you have to get through, and it's pretty well designed. You feel a good sense of accomplishment when you get through it. But overall, like the one thing I would say is like for the story, the problem I think with it is there's a lot of like side media you have to consume to kind of get the full experience of everything between the Kingsglaive movie and the Brotherhood OVA anime series they did.
Yeah.
It's like 5 episodes. You kind of need to get through both of those to have the entire context of the story start to make more sense. Like the Brotherhood thing like explains like the backstories of your group.
All right, well, let's
yeah, I'm gonna.
We're getting ahead of ourselves on time here, so let's just wrap it up and say.
Check it out.
Huh? Yeah, is it definitely worth the play? So, all right.
Check it out. It's getting some updates soon. Should be cool.
All right, so here's what's pretty cool. Just because, and I really don't care about the story. I just care about the comments. And this is, I don't even remember. I know you showed it to me, but I don't even remember who's doing it. But there's a company out there doing a left-handed version of a USB NES controller. And,
right.
Cool idea. I'll give it credit. I mean, I could see why people would like this. Some people. Dave, your stepdad.
Yeah.
He was a lefty. And I actually got good at using a left-handed computer mouse, helping him with his computer issues because he was left-handed. He had his mouse set up for left-handed use. So I could sit there and actually use it and make it work, and it surprised him. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I probably was born lefty, but I got so drilled into using my right, I can use both for most things.
Yeah.
The only thing I have trouble with is neatly writing with my left. That's just because I try to write. As people who have seen me do it, they say I try to write like a righty, even with my left hand. So if I learned how to write left-handed, I would probably could do it mentally. But anyway,
right. I have like no experience writing with my left hand, so I tried, and it's a scribbled mess.
Right. Well, what's funny is, we see this story on Facebook. We find out it's legit. And again, you can Google who did this. The controller itself is not important. I mean, this is not a new concept. VTech Smiles, for Christ's sake. The VTech Kids systems have modular inputs for both sides where you can pull
like the thing,
out.
You could like literally pop out the center control panel that had the thumbstick on the left and then the buttons on the right.
And flip it around.
And literally rotate it 180 degrees and put it back in place. It was kind of neat for what it was.
Yeah, but, I mean, again, neat concept, and I'm glad somebody did it, but it was
a lot of
hilarious that so many people proclaiming to be lefties were just tearing this thing a new one.
It's just like, some people were tearing it. Some people were like, I appreciate the effort, but I'm used to what we have.
Right.
And that's the big thing.
That was the most common nice comment that was still, I'm not going to buy your product was, if this was 1980, this would be great, but it's, I've been playing with a right-handed controller and have gotten good with it my whole life. I really don't want to spend money to learn a whole new controller that just says it's for my hand type. And I get that. And that's what was funny is, I
feel like for this one was being just an NES controller, that one wouldn't be a big deal because it's so simplistic. But if you were to try to get up to like the
even the modern
Xbox,
era,
like Xbox 360 controller, if they were to like invert that layout, that would throw so many people out.
It would have. But again,
especially because it's asymmetric.
You owe it to your life to go through and find the Facebook posts about this and just look at the parade of butthurt about. It's like people, they're trying to do something nice for you. Yes, I get it. It's either too little, too late, or completely useless to you at this point. But appreciate the effort. It's still them trying to do something nice, and it was just hilarious to me. And
yeah.
I brought that up because, it's NES, and that leads to, some of our retro topics later about things and how they've aged. But before that, for the last time this year, let's talk a little bit about The Walking Dead. My goal
we could finally put this to rest for a little while.
Right. My goal in the coming year is to cover more of the other shows that are out there, but we're not big TV people, and The Walking Dead was really this generation's sort of kickstart show to anything that wasn't your standard procedural cop drama or comedy, so that's why it gets a little bit of special attention. And they're at a very important part in the comics. And as someone who was a fan of the comics, I really wanted to see what they do with this. So we have the penultimate episode where Negan is, found Carl. Talked about that last show, and then he's in Alexandria at Rick's house. He's made spaghetti. He's there with Judith and the Olivia chick and Carl. And it's really showing that he does have a soft spot. And such as he can have, because, in the comics and in the show, he's still not afraid to use
Right, he's still there
Carl.
He's still there to intimidate.
Right, he's still there to use Carl to keep Rick broken.
Right, Rick in line.
Which was completely worse in the comics, basically saying he was going to get a group of pedos to run a train on him, So it was definitely still not 100% out of the woods, but you can really see...
Yeah, they still did well, though.
They really did well conveying... And if I remember correctly, and I haven't read the Negan backstory comic, but I believe he was a gym teacher, which would explain why he's got a partialness to kids. Because at some point he cared about them enough to be willing to teach them.
Right. You must have something there.
Right. And then I do like that he killed Spencer. That was good.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
And he did it for Spencer being a bitch and trying to usurp power, which shows, I think, and this is conveyed a lot in the comics too, especially with Negan's recent actions, I think on some level Negan likes Rick.
Maybe.
And I don't just mean because he thinks he can control him. I think he, in a lot of a very weird way, had, let's assume Rick and them just went along with the program, that at some point Rick probably would have been a number 2 man to Negan.
I could have seen that, like you were saying, I think in a weird way he kind of respected Rick for his power, like what Rick was and like what he was before Negan broke him. There was a lot of power to Rick as a person before, and there still is. It's in the background, and he's having to basically suppress it. So
right.
So Negan doesn't destroy them, but Rick as a character is probably someone that kind of fascinates Negan as another like powerhouse character in this world.
Mm-hmm. And that would definitely be worth seeing if they explore that in the series, because you can do more visually than you can in a comic.
Right.
Some other big news is Star Trek Discovery is casting the actors who play Sasha, Sonequa Martin Green.
Oh, cool.
As their lead, and that's leading a lot of people to wonder if that means she's going to be the next main cast member to die. Because,
Most times, yeah.
Yeah, because Shane,
you're in a show.
the actor who played John Bernthal, when he got cast in L.A. Noire, which then turned into Mob City, then they killed him off. A couple other people got killed off as soon as they got announced in other shows. It's not a guaranteed thing because Norman Reedus has that Ride show and he's still on, so it's not a guarantee she'll die. And
then there's also, like a good, they're in the half season, so like they're going to be off for a bit.
Right, there could be that whole notion of it not causing conflicts, or with them having all these locations now for the survivors to sort of spread out, which is what happened in the comic anyway, with the Girl Village in this one, and the Hilltop, and the Kingdom, and everything else. They could dump her in whatever community's not being focused on for a few episodes to give her a chance to go film something else, and then she comes in when she's needed and she's gone again. But that was just an interesting little tidbit out there to see what would happen. She's definitely one to keep an eye on in the second half of the season and next season to see what they do with her. But anyway, that's enough of The Walking Dead for this year. Let's move on to this week's retro topic. So I was digging around through the inventory getting ready for the last toy show, which was not a good one, but it worked.
It was good until what happened after.
Trust me, dude. They fixed that actually relatively quickly. The ATM tried to eat my deposit and not deposit it. But even still, once you actually did the dollars and cents of the show, we really just should. We probably would have made as much money staying home. But anyway,
oh well.
That's not a topic for right now.
Yep.
So I'm looking through some of the games that were brought by some of our friends, like Catman Games and Toys of Our Youth, and got me thinking about games that you play now and how well do they age. Like, there are some games where only part of them age well. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. I'll put that opening scene, especially when they throw Raziel into the vortex, up against just about anything they put out now. Because it still looks really good. And it still looks really good upscaled onto my TV. And then there's games that don't look good. And I wanted to pick 3 games that aged well and 3 games that didn't for each of us. And I tried really hard not to just use all PS1 games, because the PS1 was so trying to push the envelope of 3-dimensional graphics that the early adopter version of everything always sucks. They were just able to get better before the end of the console life to show people there was room for progression.
Right.
But some of those early to mid games just don't hold up, and I'll get into my list. So I'm going to start with the best, because, to me, the top 3 games that really held on with age, and again, this isn't just graphically, it's a little bit of everything. How well they play. Graphics are the biggest factor, because if you can't see the game, especially on a modern TV, you're not going to play it. But not just graphics. So, Symphony of the Night, obviously, to me, is probably the best that still holds up.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
I started a playthrough of it a couple months back on the PlayStation 3 upstairs, and I really need to get back and finish that. I think I might have gotten to the point the castle flips. I think I did.
Nice. That's, about halfway through the game.
Yeah, I need to get back to that.
It is a fun one, especially if you take the time to really explore and find all the stuff that's in there. Another good one, going back to the SNES, which had a lot of games that hold up. Zelda Link to the Past.
Man, that was fun.
That's still fun. That's still, think about it. They basically steal that model for the 3DS Zelda games.
Yeah, Link to a New World or something.
Yeah, Link Between Worlds was basically Link to the Past, just with a slightly different premise. And then this one's a little bit of a fanboy pick for being a wrestling fan, but it is still the best of the SmackDown series, and that is Here Comes the Pain on PS2. That still holds up. I'll throw that in a PS2 when we're testing, when we have a copy of it, and just kind of kick back and play. The match types were great. Probably the best of the Ruthless Aggression era for stars that still had enough of the Attitude Era stars left that the game felt like the roster was, a big deal. Just all kinds of great things in that game. And it still kind of holds up well graphically. Not the best. That's probably its biggest deficiency. But, again, that was in that heady PS2, PS1 era where they were still smoothing everything out.
Right, they were figuring things out.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I only have one that I could think of real fast on top of my head, but...
Because he didn't do his homework class.
Sorry. But for a best one, back onto the PS1, and I know I harp about this game a lot, but surprisingly, Legend of Dragoon, when you are in the battle animations, they look really good for the era.
But do they hold up now? Like if you threw it on if you threw it on our 55-inch 4K TV and you put it on an upscaler, is it going to look like pixels or is it going to look like something worth playing?
I still think it would probably look pretty good. I mean, the FMV, the actual truly animated cutscenes still look really good. I think they would hold up. And when you're I think the only thing that probably would is when you're just walking around. But because that one always kind of looked finicky, kind of like what we have on our bad list coming up in a bit. But when you're in battle, the models for the characters and there's when you look at it, you actually notice when you see the characters mouth when they're talking.
Yeah, I mean, there's more animation than a normal game in that era would have.
Right,
because that's going to be one of my complaints about one of my bad games.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of when you look at it more closely, when you're in battle, there's a lot of good subtle detail in the graphics for a lot of these character models and such that kind of surprise you. I mean, when you get beyond that, I mean, the things that might hold you back when it's not talking about graphics might be the translation issues that come along with a game like that, or
So anyway, now moving on to the bad. For me, I know I said I wasn't going to try to harp just on PS1, but there are two that I'm kind of counting together that I really want to mention, and that's Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil. And specifically for Metal Gear Solid, my biggest complaints are you put that thing on a modern TV without getting the Twin Snakes version or something with better graphics, it looks terrible.
I mean, yeah, if you upscale it, but
even without the upscale, it's just even stretching it to fit a TV without changing its resolution, everything gets so blocky and it's all these different gray tones and there's no actual faces on anyone and it's just a mess through and through.
I think graphically it wasn't too bad. I think it had because it had a lot of cutscenes and stuff, I thought it looked pretty good for the time. I figure the thing that would kind of harp it a little bit more is the control scheme, because overall it works, but there are a lot of moments that are kind of finicky, trying to shoot, where you have that straight shot thing. And
yeah, and that's
rotating left and right.
That's what I was going to get into with
Resident Evil.
Has the same problem, even worse actually, because Snake, you kind of have that top-down view, and if you have the laser eye on your gun, you can kind of make something work.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist in Resident Evil. It's just
the camera views.
Yeah, the camera views were atrocious. The save system for Resident Evil was worse, but the save system for both wasn't great, and it just doesn't hold up. And it surprises me that people still shell out money for the re-releases rather than waiting for true remakes. Another bad one, and it's not on my list, but I'm going to go back to N64 and pick on it for a minute, is, and I know I'm going to get some heat for this, but Mario 64 does not hold up as good as people think it does. I was watching a Watch Mojo list today, and they were going on and on about it, and I'm like, there's still cool things about the game. There's still things about that game that they're still doing now. But when you see how far a 3D Mario game has come by comparison, it really makes the N64 version unplayable. And there's actually very few quality N64 titles you can say that about. Usually when you look at things that share sort of a DNA strand with them and you go back, it makes them even cooler because oh my god, they still do this. It just didn't seem like that for me for Mario 64. So that's on my list. And then
I think the only thing you could kind of chalk that up to was that was the first of the time to do it and do it right, though, when you think about it.
Yes, it was the first 3D Mario game. It was one of the first 3D platform games to really be good.
One of the first N64 games. So,
it was a launch title. So,
right,
yeah.
So,
and
kind of the same issues that we were talking about with the other PS1 titles. The early ones they were still figuring things out. So, I mean,
yeah, I get what you're. I get what you're saying before you get in.
I think I would go back and play it.
Yeah, and I mean that's fine for you. This was my list versus yours.
Yeah.
That you didn't do. So, anyway, the last one for me that was bad, and I know I'm gonna hear 1,000 people's head explode. Final Fantasy VII.
There it is.
Does not hold up. It's still a great game. I still love to play it. But I would rather dig out my tube TV and play it on there than try to play even an upscaled download version on my TV. First of all, I totally get why overworld maps died. And I knew that from playing that Lost Odyssey game. They don't look good in HD. You can't really get an accurate view. You kind of wind up looking like a pixel blob, and it just becomes annoying. Mix in with that the very over-blocky design for the in-rendered cutscenes, as I call them, where you're just kind of talking to other players. And
like
you're
the normal
your,
game. Like the
right.
normal game.
Yeah, you're in your
When
normal blocky self versus cutscenes that are full animated. It was just, it's still a beautiful, great game when you look at it through the lens of, 1990 whatever. But when you try to go back now and visit it with modern technology, it can't hold up.
I can get that.
That's it for my list. Did you think of any ones to you that just are unplayably bad? When you try to do them now, either by controls, gameplay, or whatever? If you can't find one, it's fine. We're running ahead on time anyway.
Right.
So
honestly, nothing's coming to mind. I might speak up and throw something down if I think of it, but yeah.
All right, good talk, Coach.
I think we'll move on.
All right, so this is kind of the big part for me for the week. We might actually go a little over an hour on this. Pretty big week in wrestling. There was Roadblock last night. I want to start with that, and I'm going to kind of work back to the good news, because all in all, for the first pay-per-view since brand split, this is for the first time on pay-per-view, I should say, since the brand split, there's been a pay-per-view that I just could not really get into.
Dang.
And it's definitely showing why WWE is smart to scale back to just one a month next year. Now, there are some great things about this pay-per-view, and we're going to go through just the quick highlights, if you will, and what they mean and what we would like to see for the future. So, hang on one second here. I'm trying to get the guy's name who joined them for the pre-show. Anyway, first of all, they had an actual legit pro wrestling journalist on the pre-show, which was cool because he, Sam, and I can't remember his last, Sam Roberts, that's right. He's a very well-respected radio and online wrestling journalist who actually knows his stuff. It's kind of like if they were to get that Army Hiswari, whatever his name is, I don't even know his name, but there's an MMA journalist who started out an online guy and radio guy who's now worked his way up to being the number one go-to guy until he got into a little bit of trouble for spoiling that Lesnar was coming back. Anyway, this was pretty cool. Also, you had Adrian Neville return during the cruiserweight match. He left as a babyface, came back, looked like he was going to stay a babyface, was going to go over help Rich Swann, who retained his title, and they were friends. As soon as they mentioned how good of friends they were when he walked up, and like, "Can you wait for it," and sure enough, turned heel, attacked everyone, which is really the shot in the arm the cruiserweight division needed. And hopefully they book it well and keep it going. So there's a couple of good things. Two things that I really didn't like. One I really didn't like. First, Braun Strowman versus Sami Zayn and the whole, can Zayn last 10 minutes with a giant? They're doing the giant killer gimmick for Zayn. Fine, I'm not mad about that. That can work. Match stipulation is simple. Go 10 minutes, to prove to Mick Foley that you can last. Now, the way they did it was when Zayn made the 10 minutes, they ended the match and called him the winner, which looked really stupid because, first of all, you just undid all of the booking greatness that, having Braun Strowman squash all these jobbers and get into mixes with top guys. You just undid all of that because now it's like he couldn't beat the little guy in 10 minutes. Yes, the little guy was outsmarting him and being quicker than him, but what's he going to do to get his heat back? I would have really rather them book it where, yes, he makes it the 10 minutes and that's it. He gets killed and gets pinned. Or even then, he just gets caught, when he tries to go on the offensive now that he's made it to 10 minutes to prove his point and gets beat and gets pinned. They needed some kind of better ending to the match to give something back to Braun Strowman to keep him strong instead of waiting to do it on Monday Night Raw. But anyway, so that's the one part I really didn't like, but the part that I just outright hated. Once again, for like the 5,000th time, Charlotte is women's champion. And had another match with Sasha Banks where somehow they did all of their classic numbers. Sasha Banks injury angles number 1, 2, and 3. And, Banks bumping like a mad woman who looks like she's ready to die. And it was just so predictable. I didn't care. I made the joke live tweeting on Twitter that, I'm more interested in looking at the cam girls who will follow my page, looking at their media pictures so I can see, their attempts at getting $9.95 from me. That was more interesting. And, I'm trying to be clean for radio, so that joke really probably wasn't the go with. But it's still the point that it's like, what am I going to do? It's like, we know what's going to happen and Adam Pacitti over What Culture is sitting here, he's basically stroking himself like, oh, wow, because they harped up, and as soon as they harped up, I knew who was going to win. Charlotte's undefeated pay-per-view streak. Streaks in wrestling are a dead frickin' end unless they are handled exactly right. And very few streaks have ever been ended properly where it didn't just completely ice out the guy who lost and didn't waste the momentum on a guy who beat the streak if he doesn't do anything with it. Because if you don't immediately turn around ending a major streak and win some kind of belt or title, you've wasted it because it's a very fleeting moment boost.
I was going to say, the main one obviously that comes from my mind as a lesser involved fan, I guess suppose you could say, is the Undertaker streak.
Yeah, but
what would you go with that?
The guy who got the win was Brock Lesnar. They were going to use that to feed to Roman Reigns to get him over, and Roman Reigns was such box office poison it never worked. Right. So they wound up wasting that more for getting Goldberg back over. Like, they cared more about mentioning Lesnar beating the streak with the Goldberg feud than they eventually had to give up and stop doing during the Reigns feud, because that just made people hate Reigns more. They didn't want Reigns to beat the guy who beat the streak. So
right.
That's what was crazy about that part. But again, they've been feuding for months now, and I was going to be good and be a responsible journalist and get all of the details of their feud, but it's just so mind-numbing. But basically, what their feud boils down to is this. Trash talk, match on Raw, Sasha wins belt. Trash talk, match on pay-per-view, Charlotte wins belt back. And they've been doing this so often, no one cares. And there's a storyline they could have aped with a few changes that would have been so much better for what they're trying to do. That could have been that moment to make it matter. And basically, starting from whenever they started this to now, I would let Sasha keep getting tag team and guest referee or whatever victories over Charlotte, but not for the belt. Over and over, but every time that earns her a pay-per-view match, you have Charlotte win until you get to Mania, which is coming up. And, you throw in a few months where they'll do an injury angle for a month or two to give Sasha a break, so it's still fresh in the fans' mind, but it's not jammed down their throats like it's been. And then you have her come back, and eventually you get to that point where, of course, you've got this. If you win this match, you get your one last chance, which is what they tried to do with Roadblock in the line, with this being the last time they can fight deal.
Right.
But you somehow have it where Banks gets her shot at Mania. And that's where you have the streak end, and that's where you have that's where you have Banks go over. So you have Banks, who's just beaten this pay-per-view streak of Charlotte's, and you have her holding the belt and winning, and in that moment, you have whoever's going to be next come out and waffle her for the belt. And I know some people are going to go, that's just going to make her look weak, and go, no, that's going to make it mean something, because now you have that person coming out going, you're the champion now, you finally got it away from Charlotte, I'm going to take it away from you. And you just keep having them fight, and you slowly let Sasha be that dominant champion And you can go one of two ways with it. She can be the babyface dominant champion for however long you want to keep her the champion, or you use it to let her be what she's the best at, and that's being heel. So,
right.
That's how I'd book it. And hopefully, I'm going to keep retweeting Anna Pacitti until he listens to this, because he was going on and on about how special that moment's going to be. She loses. No, it's not. Because there's no context to why a streak like that for Charlotte would matter, because the big problem with wrestling fans nowadays is even most of the casual fans understand some of what's going on booking-wise. So when they see that, oh, look, they're doing a video package for this feud. Oh, look, the Sasha Banks chick keeps winning the belt right before the pay-per-view only to lose it. Well, I already know what's going to happen. Click. Even the casual fans are getting that smart. And they're not doing anything to sort of protect themselves against it. And that's my problem with it. And that's why it's not going to mean anything with the road they're on now that somebody beats, Charlotte at a pay-per-view. There's nothing long-term about it. There's nothing that could build, because in my scenario, you have the new challenger attacking. You have Charlotte, who's finally lost on pay-per-view, furious and trying to interject herself back in to get her belt back. The focus always stays on the title, but you've made Sasha Banks so credible that she can go on a run of beating whoever while waiting out her rematches. I mean, it's all there, ready to go, and that's how you make a streak matter.
Right.
Because then that can keep giving, oh, well, Sasha Banks ended Charlotte Flair's, undefeated pay-per-view streak, but now, can she match the same streak? Oh, no, she's, you can kind of keep rebuilding that story if you do it right. And they didn't. So now it's just going to be, and it's WWE mentality for 2016-17. Oh, here we go. Just like they did with the New Day. And that's actually something else I want to get to. Oh, look, record's broken. All right, time for them to lose, which is what happened to New Day. Broke the record on Raw, lost the titles on the pay-per-view, which I know had been the plan for a while, but it's still like, you had a chance to really get that edge back on the New Day by having them continue to be just borderline tweener enough that you get some of the crowd booing what they do, but you still get some cheering, and they get desperate to hold on to the belt, so they keep cheating until eventually one of them gets sick of it, and that's what starts their breakup, and which culminates in them losing the belt more through their own implosion than it being beaten by a team, especially a team that's not a regular active tag team. Another missed opportunity, but that's enough for Roadblock. So I want to work back again, like I said, to some of the better things going on. And for me, the biggest and the best news to come out of WWE this week is, much like the Cruiserweight Classic, they're doing a UK Championship tournament.
Yeah, I remember seeing
the belt that's basically the pound coin put down on the current WWE World Heavyweight Championship style belt. It looks amazing. Google it.
Nice.
When they first announced it, I wasn't sure about if this was going to be just the 2-day tournament for a belt, which didn't make sense that they would make a belt for a 2-day tournament. And of course, we find out the WWE is basically setting up their own equivalent of a minor league UK promotion and are going to be having a weekly television show that is filmed in the UK featuring UK talent. And there's some interesting things I want to talk about that. They've named the competitors. Again, check the list and definitely see some of the big names. 3W, CPW guys are a part of it. It's definitely looking like it's going to be great. Now, all of this is going to lead to a weekly show, and one of the big announcements that go along with that is Nigel McGuinness is joining the company to work as a commentator for this, which I couldn't be happier about. He really, really matured into that role well with Ring of Honor. He's a great talent. It's a shame his in-ring career got cut short, but it's great to see that they're really being serious about this by bringing in somebody who can bring credibility and decency to the proceedings instead of just saying, oh, well, we got Michael Cole and Byron Saxton recording from a studio in the States. No, it gives it that real, this is happening, this is current feel. So I'm anxious to see how that goes. So yeah, you pulled the belt up over there on your screen. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Nice, it looks pretty good. Did the Walt Culture guys put their 2 cents in on this yet?
They did, and they were excited about it. One of the big things they were happy to hear when they interviewed William Regal about it is that the WWE is not going to impose any limits on promotions that talent's allowed to work for. Now, that was said during the period before they announced this was going to be a weekly show. And the reason why I bring all this up is there was some comments made by the people behind New Japan Pro Wrestling who were like, look, we see what they're doing in the UK. We see what they've done with the cruiserweights, which naturally usually appeals to a Hispanic audience. And New Japan has grown to the point where they're like, well, we either need to join WWE or fight them. And started teasing announcements coming, which, knowing them, is probably going to be some kind of back-end deal where they're doing both. Where they're fighting WWE while still being on their payroll. They're too smart for just about anything else. So that should be interesting to see in the coming weeks how New Japan handles WWE expanding globally by interjecting themselves into a local market environment.
Right.
Rather than try to air British wrestling worldwide, which, as much as we would love it, and it's going to be on the network, so we'll be able to see it, you know, instead of trying to air it like on a USA network or something like that, they're keeping it small, they're keeping it with that local feel. It's just accessible by everyone, and that should be a really cool thing for wrestling fans. So I'm really anxious to see where they go with that. But that's pretty much it for our final episode of the year. If you heard any weird things on the track, we had a couple of different audio issues, but I think we, looking at the stream feed here, I think we've got it pretty well hammered out, so it shouldn't be too jarring when you listen back to this. So for Nerds at Night Gaming, I am Kid Thunder DJ, and
I'm Fire47.
All right, thank you guys very much. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year.
Happy holidays.